Salt has been one of the most sought after commodities in human history. Right now, it's very cheap and cost effective, but in a post-collapse environment, it will be one of the most sought after substances known to man. So my first recommendation before getting into the video is that people go get themselves a nice watertight container like this Coleman one here. It doesn't have to be Coleman, it can be whatever you got. And put some salt in there, stick it in your bug out bag and forget about it. As I'm about to discuss, salt is a vital component of any emergency preparedness or survival kit. Now for something that's so abundant and cost effective and accessible right now, it'd be quite foolish to not have it on hand. And there's a variety of uses for salt in survival situations and just general everyday purpose, which I'm going to quickly go over. There's probably 1,000 more specific uses, but there's several different general categories of use. So the first one is preserving food. So food preservation obviously is going to be crucial in a post-collapse environment where you may not have the benefits of refrigeration or other methods of long-term food preservation. So if you're wanting to cure meats, you're going to need salt for that. A lot of people are planning on doing the hunter-gathering thing, as unrealistic as that might be. Nonetheless, you're still going to need salt to preserve that food throughout the spring and summer months. So basically that salt is going to kill off and inhibit the growth of any microorganisms within the meat which might contaminate it and make it unfit for consumption. So definitely the number one use for it, I think, is going to be preserving food. Now, of course, there's the health benefits of it, which probably should be number one, because you need salt in order to survive. So I'm not just talking about the table salt, which only has sodium chloride in it, but I'm talking about the sea salts that have all the other trace minerals in it, which basically are the same thing as your electrolytes. So you need salt in order to retain fluids, in order to help your nervous system function properly, especially considering the rigors of the post-collapse environment in a physical sense. There's probably going to be a lot of excessive sweating, so there's going to be salt deficiency with people. So you're going to want to keep your electrolytes up with healthy salt. So for that reason, salt is going to be vital for your survival. It can also be used for a variety of medical purposes. So it has different antiseptic properties. So saline water, or basically salt water, typically is used to flush out bacteria from wounds prior to treatment. So salt is going to be essential for that purpose. It also has some oral hygiene functions, so if you have an abscess, there's not going to be any doctors around. If you have any other issues going on in your mouth, like canker sores or cuts or something to that effect, rinsing it out with salt water can help flush out and get rid of any nasty bacteria and microorganisms which may lead to infection and cause you a lot bigger problems. So salt will have some utility in agriculture for livestock, and it can also be used in the process of tanning hides, although I don't know much about that. Seller 559 might. Obviously, salt can be used to melt ice, and ironically, it can also be used to put out grease fires. So it's just the uses of salt are endless, really, when it comes down to it. Now, are you going to be using salt to melt ice in the post-collapse environment? Probably not. You're probably going to want to save that salt for other purposes. But, you know, it's one potential use for it. Salt can have a variety of different cleaning uses. It's been known to be used for cleaning a variety of different things. Hundreds of different uses, from getting rid of rust to being used as a degreaser, among countless other uses. Last but not least, the taste factor. It's going to make your food taste a lot better. And in a post-collapse environment where the food that you eat is not going to be the lovely processed stuff, which tastes very good but had nutrient deficiency, well, now the food you're going to eat is probably going to taste pretty crappy, but you're going to want to salt that down just in order to make it palatable. There's a variety of other little things that can be used for from expediting the cooking process, as it's going to raise the temperature at which water boils, so that's going to force the food to cook faster, be used for preventing mold, odor control, for pest management. It can be added to soaps to enhance their functioning. I think the number one use is going to be barter, because it's something that you can store indefinitely, and it's out of the way, and like I say, right now it's very cost effective. So I think it'd be foolish not to have this on hand for your preps, for all the reasons I just listed. So if you're looking for items to barter in SHTF, that you should make sure that they're not things that are readily abundant in your immediate vicinity, because obviously the value of those things is going to be lower. So take advantage of the current globalized market and buy something that is cheap but not necessarily abundant in the region that you're in. So I was inspired to make this video after watching a documentary about the Tran-Saharan Salt trade back in the, I guess it was post-medieval era, just around the 1500s. And there was an empire in the country which is now known as Mali, which is a thriving empire at the time. And they were one of the main producers of salt in the known world at that time. And so a lot of it originated 500 miles south of Timbuktu. Timbuktu was kind of the last place that these salt caravans could stop for supplies and gear up for the long 500-mile trek through the Sahara Desert, which, you know, can see temperatures well above 50 degrees Celsius in summertime. So people made this journey several times a year, 500 miles there, 500 miles back. It took them about 6 to 8 weeks to do it with camels, and they brought back hundreds of kilograms of salt, which they traded on the market, and a lot of it went to Europe and the Middle East. So salt has been sought after throughout human history. Now salt is mined in a variety of ways. It's mined from the sea, from sea salt. There is sea salt evaporation methods. These can be time-consuming and costly and laborious, but it's definitely there for the taking. There's an abundance of salt in the sea. Now, the problem with modern sea salt, some people have claimed that it is highly toxic and contaminated due to all of the chemicals and stuff that we put in the ocean. That may be true. Some people still contest that sea salt is better than table salt, which is just sodium chloride stripped of all its other trace minerals that make salt essentially an electrolyte. Now, there's also sedimentary deposits that make for salt mines. There's a lot of salt in the United States. The United States produces about 40 million tons per year. Germany produces about 17.7 tons, and Canada about 12.3 tons. So there's definitely a lot of salt. However, it is not always readily accessible to people depending on where you are. So, I mean, if you're a person who lives next to one of these salt mines, then, you know, I wouldn't suggest stockpiling a large amount of salt for barter. Chances are, you know, the value of salt, at least within your region, is going to be very low. Now, I really do think that, you know, putting away some salt is not a hard thing to do. Anybody can go drop 20 bucks on a big bag of salt, put it downstairs. It's never going to go bad, you know, so long as you can control the humidity and the moisture that gets in there. It's going to last forever. You know, put it in a bag and put that bag within a 10-gallon container or something to that effect, fill it with salt, and there you go. You know, you have it, and it's going to be a great barter item if you're not around a salt mine, something like that, because nobody's going to really have the means or the wherewithal to travel hundreds of miles to get salt, but it's going to be a very sought after commodity. And a lot of the really experienced preppers believe that it's going to be one of the most sought after commodities in the post-collapse environment. James Wesley Rawls included thinks that salt will be one of the number one bartering items. So something to take into consideration. I think that it's something that's very accessible. It's very cheap right now, but it's also something which is going to be very expensive and very sought after in a post-collapse environment. So I'm curious to know what other sort of uses you guys might have for salt, and whether or not you think it's as vital of a preparedness item as others have proposed. I certainly think it is, obviously, because we need it to survive. It's in every part of our body. We need it in order to function. But, I mean, is it a little overblown in terms of its other uses, or is it primarily just because we need it to survive? So I'm really curious to see what you guys have to say about this and what you may have used salt for in the past, and if you can give me any more ideas. So let me know what you think. Thanks for watching. Canadian Prepper out. Check out the Canadian Prepper Network blog, an excellent resource for Canadian survivalists and preppers.